Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk about the most controversial thing in amateur golf. I'm not talking about anchoring a broom handle putter, I'm not talking about hoodies, I want to talk about the World Handicapping System. It's been in place for 5 years now, but what is it? Why was it introduced? What were its goals? Did it achieve those goals? What do golfers think about it? Do they love it? Do they hate it? What do you think about it? Get in the comments below and let me know, I'd love to hear. And also I'd like to give you my thoughts at the end as to how it could possibly be improved. So first we're going to start off with, what is the WHS? So what is the World Handicapping System? Well, the R&A and the USGA got together with the other handicapping bodies and brought in a unified system that would calculate handicaps in the same way regardless of where you play around the world. So that all sounds good. Its goal was to unify all 6 handicapping bodies. So it came in January 2020, in the UK it came in November 2020. Since then in England it's been adopted by over 1,800 courses, there's millions of shots been recorded against it. But why was it needed? The WHS is a handicapping method that's meant to be easy to use and adaptable. It's there to allow golfers of all different abilities to compete against each other. If you're a scratch golfer and you're playing off somebody who's off 28, they're going to get a lot more shots, which over the course of 18 holes should equal it out and mean you can have a fair and equal game. So the powers that be wanted something that was easy to use and a single consistent measure that could be used around the world. They also wanted a handicapping system that was portable. Prior to WHS, if you played at a really hard club, you'd have perhaps a higher handicap than you would if you played at an easier club, and that would give you an unfair advantage if you went to play at an easier club or vice versa. Whereas now your handicap travels with you, it's your handicap, so depending on club to club or country to country, your handicap will travel with you depending on which course and which tees you're playing on whichever day you play. They wanted something that allowed people who weren't members of a golf club to be able to get and keep a handicap, and they also wanted it to be more inclusive. Back in the day you could only get a handicap if you were a member of a course and you put cards in for 18 holes. Now, due to some revisions that came in 2024 to the WHS, if you're playing a par 3 course over a certain length, or you can put a 9-hole score in, so it's making it more accessible for more golfers to get a handicap. When WHS was first launched, there were 2 key words that were used over and over again. It was inclusive and accessible, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to recognise changes in people's lives. Not everybody's got time to go and play 18 holes of golf. Not everybody can play in a golf competition. Perhaps they want to play a recreation round and still submit a score. Maybe you're not a member of a golf club, and there are apps out there such as subscription services, say iGolf by England Golf, where you can record your scores and maintain a handicap that can use for open days or just for playing with your mates. Another huge change that came in was the maximum handicap limit went up to 54 for men and women. Now that's quite a lot of shots. Obviously golf's really hard, and if you're a beginner you're going to probably need all those shots, but that is going to feature later in this episode when we talk about competitions and how handicaps like that are really affecting things today in 2025. But guys, please tell me your comments. What are your thoughts on WHS? Are you a high handicapper? Are you a low handicapper? Do you love it or do you loathe it? So how does the World Handicapping System work? Well, it's not as complicated as you may think, so please bear with me and I'll try and get you through it in about a minute. So the first thing you need as a golfer is your handicap index. So what it does, it looks at your last 20 scores and it picks your best 8 scores from within those 20. Those 8 scores then go through a formula, which I'm not going to bore you with, and that calculates your handicap index. So my current handicap index is 6.2. So this is my England Golf app. And what this does, it records all my scores, whether it's a general play or a competition, I put them all in there, and then it picks out my best 8. And the best 8 you can see are from the green circles here. Yep, I know there's some big numbers in there. The green line at the bottom is my 20th round, so when I put another one in, that one drops out of the equation. So that gives me my handicap index. Now the next thing I need is a course index, because I could play a really hard course or I could play a really easy course. My 6.2 here at Fulford, if I go off the white tees, so the back tees, gives me 9 shots, because this course is harder than average. If it was easier, perhaps my 6 shots might go down to 5. So it all depends on your gender, where you're playing and which tees you're playing from. Then if you're playing in a competition, you might get a playing index. So we've got a handicap index, we've got a course handicap. Are you still with me? Yep. So and what you get there is a playing handicap could be an individual Stableford, where maybe you get 95% of your handicap, or if it's a match play 4-ball, you'll get 90% of your handicap, and that's designed to take a few shots off the higher handicappers without really penalising the lower handicappers. 95% of 5 is still a 5 handicap. And then you can also put general play scores in, where you don't have to be in a competition. You have to declare that you're going to play a round beforehand. There's been a lot of talk about this recently, a lot of controversy, people just putting scores in afterwards when they've had a really good round. That's not on you. You've either got to go in the pro shop or open up the app and say you're going to have an intent to play a round and record that round before you do, and you also have to have someone who's going to mark your card for you. So this allows people who aren't members of a club, maybe using iGolf or a similar app like that, to then be able to put a score in. And then one thing that WHS is doing already is it's looking at the playing conditions that day. So it's got a beautiful summer's evening here in York, but if it was tipping it down or torrential rain or the wind was coming in, you know, then maybe scores today would be higher, and the handicap system would take a look at that and take that into account. So after the World Handicapping System had been in place for 4 years, the R&A and the USGA decided it was time to give it a bit of a refresh. You've got to remember, following COVID, there was a huge spike in interest levels for golf. And the WH system at that point had over 100 million scores recorded in it in over 125 countries. So they looked at that and they thought, how could they improve it? And what they sought to do was 4 key things. They looked at including shorter courses, so you can put a score in on a shorter course. They've got the expected score ruling now, where if you don't score on a hole, it will look at the score differential based on your recent playing ability and predict a score for you. So you won't always get like a net double bogey, so that's one to look out for. The playing conditions calculation adjustment was going to be used more and more. You know, if you're playing in a really windy day, really difficult conditions, that course is going to be harder. That's not your fault. So they will take that into account. And also, there was enhanced guidance given for clubs on how to conduct a handicap review. So, as my grandmother used to say, all in the garden is rosy. Well, not quite. In fact, it's very hard to find a golfer, an amateur golfer, who's got a good word to say about the WHS. Lower handicappers are saying it's ruining golf. They're saying it's not even worth them entering a competition. So perhaps all these changes aren't as inclusive as the R&A and USGA said. You know, now handicaps can go up to 54 in a competition. It's not uncommon to see 45 points winning a Stableford. That would mean a scratch golfer's got to shoot a gross 9 under par to compete. That can't be right. You know, we had a junior competition here where a really good junior off scratch played a newbie, and that's give them 59 shots over 18 holes. So you can understand why there's a frustration here. But why has it all gone wrong? So I think the biggest bugbear with the World Handicapping System is that it's getting really common now to see super high scores, silly high scores winning competitions. That's really frustrating everybody. You know, you can see 40 plus points or someone coming in with a net 58. Something's got to be done about that. Another big gripe is that under the old Congu system here in the UK, if you played better, you came down by 0.1 at a time. If you're a Cat 1, 0.2, Cat 2, 0.3. So your handicap would come down 0.1 at a time every time you beat your score. So it could take you years to get down to be a scratch golfer. Now that's not the case. And the case in point here is my son Zach. So my son Zach's 16. In January last year, he was playing off 9.7. In May this year, he's off 0.3. So the people that are saying that Zach wouldn't have got there if it was a 0.1 reduction each time are quite right. But then there is the counter argument, isn't there, that if your handicap is based on your current playing ability, which is what WHS is all about, if Zach had come down 0.1 at a time, he'd be off 5 or 6 now perhaps. So they'd have to give him more shots, even though his current ability is, you know, low to mid 70s, which will give you a scratch handicap. So I think you've got to look at both sides of the coin there. WHS wanted people to put a card in every time they played, and I think that would be great if they did that. That could possibly fix this, but you know, not everybody wants to play under tournament conditions. Maybe you just want to rock up and have a game with your mates. You're not bothered about holing out every putt. In the UK, we've had a very traditional competitive season, say from mid-April to early October, predominantly because of the weather here. So, you know, that's when we would build our handicaps that would carry you through the winter into the next year with those reductions, whereas now you can put a card in the middle of winter if you want to, which is something that we're just not used to. So, you know, under the old rules, I'd put the odd supplemental score in, but not that many. Under the old rules, if you're Category 1, you weren't allowed to put a supplemental score in, whereas now you can put a general play score in every day of the week. So you could really, you know, 20 rounds isn't that long. If you played every day for a month, you could have some massive changes to your handicap. There's another significant contributor that I think gets left out of the discussion, and that is the net double bogey rule, where when you use the WHS, the worst you can score is a net double bogey. So imagine you're on a par 4, you put 2 out of bounds, you could be looking at an 8 or a 9 or any higher, but the worst you'll get is 6 if you don't get a shot on that hole, or 7 if you get a stroke. So, you know, for a higher handicapper where there's always going to be a few holes, a few disasters every round, you know, that's being guarded against. It's being softened by these net double bogeys. And, you know, the thing that makes bad golfers bad is the scores they shoot. yet that's been completely taken out of the equation. So the net double bogey rule does have a hand to play in this. So what can we do to fix the WHS? I think it's unrealistic to say scrap it and go back to the old systems. So what can we do? I'm going to tell you my thoughts in a moment, but please put your comments below because this is so controversial. I think it's going to be really interesting. Also guys, if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a subscribe. I'm not getting to film as much as I'd like at the moment and I really want to grow the channel, so please help me to do that. Please give me a like, please subscribe. So here are my thoughts on how you can improve the WHS. So guys, I've done a little bit of research, I've talked to some fellow golfers and these are their ideas. Okay, they might not all work together as a combination, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. So golfshake.com think that in a competition, playing handicap should be 75 or 80%, no more than 80% of your course handicap. So that would shave off a lot of shot for the higher handicappers. Would that make it fairer? I think a really quick fix is if clubs run their competitions in divisions. So perhaps less than 6 handicap is Division 1, Division 2 is up to say 13, something like that. So you're competing against golfers with a comparable handicap. I think that's a really easy way to fix this. I think what would make absolute sense is if the WHS is reviewed periodically. So perhaps every time the rules are updated, every 3 or 4 years, the WH system goes through a review as well. You know, there's so many shots being put into this. There's got to be some data that can be extracted. There's got to be some data that can be given to clubs to help them analyse trends when they're setting their competitions up. So I think that regular review and assessment and really pulling the data has got to be a good way forward. The handicaps that always seem the most suspect to me are the ones where they're going through an iGolf system or something like that. I heard a story recently where someone was playing with a guy who wasn't a member of a club. He later found out that guy had submitted that score that day through iGolf and the other guy hadn't even been asked to sign or verify that score. So how do you police something like that? They've got to get better at that. There's a lot of talk at the moment about players must sign in or say they've got an intent to play, sign into the app before they go out and peg it up. You know, they're saying that if you're not, you're manipulating the rules, which is cheating. So you can't just go putting a good score in after you've had a good score or a bad score in after you've had a bad score. You've got to set that intent up. Clubs have got to get really strict with that. WHS wanted golfers to put a card in for every round they play, and I think that would certainly go a long way to fixing that. But maybe a halfway house could be all your 20 scores, of which your best data taken from, have got to be in the last 2 years. With the MyEG app, I can see my scores going back for over 10 years. It's fantastic. But you can also see other people's if they're your friends on the app. I've seen people where their 20 scores date back to 2018. So this is not a contemporary measure of their ability, is it? They're just putting in the scores they want. So I think you've really got to do something where the score is more current. You can't have something going back over a period of years. Also, is 40% of our scores the right number? You know, is 8 from 20 correct? Should maybe 16 from 20 be correct? Would that give us a more realistic analysis of our current performance level? Okay, so that's it for this week, guys. A bit of a wordy episode, and I'm sorry about that, but that was the nature of the topic. I've been researching this one and been keen to film it for a while because it's so topical. You know, you go to 19th hole and everybody's moaning about the WHS, so please put your comments below. Let me know what you think, what you do to change it. Does it need changing? I'd love to hear your views. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like. If you loved it, please give us a subscribe and tell your friends about the Golf Show. There's over 200 episodes on the back catalogue, which could be reviewing the new Adidas golf shoes, testing a ping driver, testing a lab putter, me playing at JCB or St Andrews. So there's plenty for you to go out there, guys. So I hope you enjoyed it. Give us a subscribe and we'll see you next time on the Golf Show. I hope you enjoyed the episode of the Golf Show. To watch another, click here. To subscribe, click here.